Regardless of your politics, we should agree on this much. Government is supposed to work for the people and represent the people, but of course, not always the way it works. In Flint, Michigan, and North Carolina, it's not working at all. Let's start in the Tar Heel state. After Democrat Roy Cooper beat Republican Governor Pat McCrory, the GOP-led assembly passed a series of bills that restricted the power of the governor. Pure naked politics, and it did nothing to help the state or its residents. And in D.C., congressional Republicans quietly closed the probe into Flint, Michigan's contaminated drinking water. They pointed fingers at state officials and the EPA, but critics say they should have done more. Democrats, they wanted to continue the investigation. They say the Republican governor of Michigan, Rick Snyder, stonewalled them. It's unbelievable, Andrew, starting in North Carolina. I mean, because you don't like who won? He had, I think, 3,000 people who reported to him. Then all of a sudden, the next day, it's less than a third of that. I mean,
it's terrible governance. It's absolutely reversing the will of the voters of North Carolina, and it is completely unsurprising. The one theme that we've had throughout every segment of the show, other than the terrorism segment that we were talking about, is that governance has given way to perpetual campaigning. Why aren't we going to abandon the Electoral College? Because the next election is on the clock. Why are Democrats or why are Republicans in North Carolina pushing back against Democrats? Because they're positioning themselves for the next election. Same thing with Flint. Same things with all of these issues that we've been talking about. It is an epidemic that is running through the American government system right now, which is forget about actually getting anything done. What puts us in the best position to win the next election? So that maybe if we get a supermajority, we can install every policy that we want. And we've been caught in this limbo for years.
But the raw, hustle of it. You don't like who wins, and then the next day, the power of the governor that's been there, and if the Republican won, we wouldn't have touched it. We're now going to basically cut the legs out of what you can do as governor, which guarantees 4 years of just stalemates and tons of vetoes. But you get to Flint, Michigan, and your old buddies on the Hill, who thinks in their right mind that, I guess it is good politics, but you stonewall and you basically cover for a governor who, let's remind everybody, on his watch, they chose the cheapest way to get water to the folks of Flint. They used rusted pipes here. They were warned what would happen. Then when they found out that literally people could turn on their faucets, and you could light them on fire, basically, they then covered it up. But somehow they protect this governor, and the audacity of the report that comes out is it's the EPA's fault. And for good measure, the governor never turned over the documents he was asked to by a congressional probe, and somehow, some way, never mind. And they dump it right before they go home for the holiday break. I'm not just blaming this guy. I'm blaming Washington more than anything because they promised they were going to get to the bottom of it, and a year later, almost to a day, there's no other answers.
Well, I would blame Washington, but I would also blame the leadership in Michigan that allowed this to happen. Fortunately, there is a
okay,
solution.
But we know they're dirty. There's nothing that the folks in D.C. who are supposed to make sure that people in Michigan, in a poor city like Flint, can actually have drinkable water.
Well, there are, number one, there are laws. The officials in Michigan can be sued for not doing their duty. And most importantly, the voters of Michigan can throw out the people in Michigan who were responsible for this travesty in Flint.
But now it's not just the governor's responsibility. Now it's the Obama administration's problem. Now it's Congress's problem. Now everybody's to blame, so nobody's to blame.
If you read the report, it's the EPA's fault.
Well, what's important for the news media to do is to try to bring the facts to light for the people's consumption, which you're doing.
Okay.
And once we get an agreement on the facts that this was a state problem caused by state officials,
we have it in black and white.
Then there can be the right result against those state officials.
I guess my only point is, I'm not some naive babe in the woods. I know, and I'm as cynical as the next guy. But for drinking water in Michigan or going after Russia for hacking our election, there should be some lines where it's not partisan, for crying out loud. This is crazy.
Right, but so public
Right.
policy over partisan politics is the way to go for everybody.
Sounds like motherhood and apple pie.
No,
but now
but-
all of a sudden
but that's
it's
what you-
naked.
but- but-
liberalism.
but Richard, that's what
maybe
you-
that'll
Richard-
actually happen.
But it wasn't
Right.
this bad.
Richard,
No, it hasn't been this
it
bad.
hasn't
It's
been this
been
bad.
getting progressively worse, but now we're to a point where nobody seems to have the political
By
courage
the
to
way,
actually stand
do
up
you
and risk
imagine
their
if
own
Watergate
jobs.
happened
By
today?
the way,
Do you imagine if
you
Watergate
should
happened
all
today?
stop being so ahistorical. This is not the worst it's been. Go right back to what happened in the election of 1800 and tell me it's never been this bad. It
go
is
back a
not.
couple hundred
It is
years.
not healthy to sit and say this is the worst we've ever seen. This is human nature. This is what human beings do. The problem is we have weak parties, and when you have a divided government with weak parties, this is what happens. And you have
I
to
gotta
correct
break.
that
I gotta
problem.
break. Coming
and
up
that's
next
the
here.
problem.
Closer to home, Bill de Blasio trying to heal his relationship with the press, shaking up the communications team again. But he's also getting press for his comments about Hillary Clinton. And trust me, he's got tips for her as well.